My name is Ashley Hartwell. I'm 30 years old, and I built a life in wildlife conservation from nothing, while my family built their empire on Charleston real estate. Success looks different through their eyes, though, because on the day of my grandmother Eleanor's funeral, none of that mattered. The moment I pulled my beat-up Honda into the circular drive of the Hartwell estate, surrounded by Mercedes and BMWs, I was back to being the family embarrassment. The estate loomed ahead, white columns, pristine gardens, old Southern money on display. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I steadied my breath, gripping the steering wheel. This wasn't just a funeral. It was walking back into 15 years of rejection, knowing they'd treat me like I was invisible. But Eleanor deserved my presence, even if her children and grandchildren didn't want it. Inside, Charleston's elite filled the grand parlor, their hushed conversations mixing with classical music. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over designer suits and black dresses that cost more than my monthly rent. I spotted my family immediately, clustered near the front, accepting condolences like royalty receiving subjects. My mother, Victoria, stood rigid in Chanel, her silver hair perfectly styled. My father, Richard, wore his usual stern expression, shaking hands with business associates. My sister Brittany posed near Eleanor's portrait, dabbing at dry eyes while her phone captured every angle for Instagram. Uncle Monty worked the room with his practiced charm, and my cousin Preston stood off to the side, drink in hand, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. I slipped into a seat in the back row. Only my best friend Maggie sat beside me, squeezing my hand. "You okay?" she whispered. I nodded, though my throat was tight. Up front, Eleanor's casket was surrounded by white roses, her favorite. My chest ached. Those monthly lunches we'd shared in secret for 15 years, talking about my work, her laughing at my stories about injured pelicans and stubborn sea turtles. She was the only one who saw me. The only one who cared. The service started. Victoria gave a eulogy about Eleanor's legacy and values, words that rang hollow. She never mentioned that Eleanor came from nothing, worked for everything, or that she spent her final years disappointed in the very family standing around her casket. When it ended, people filed past to pay respects. I waited until the crowd thinned, then approached. Victoria's eyes flicked over me like I was a stranger who'd wandered in off the street. "Ashley," she said coldly, "I'm surprised you came." "She was my grandmother, too," I replied, my voice steady despite the hurt. Richard barely glanced my way. Brittany whispered something to her husband, and they both smirked. Uncle Monty gave me a dismissive nod. Only Preston met my eyes with what looked like guilt before quickly looking away. Then I felt a warm hand on my shoulder. Dolores, Eleanor's housekeeper of 40 years. Her dark eyes held knowing compassion. "She loved you, baby girl," she whispered, "more than any of them know." As I turned to leave, a voice cut through the murmurs. "Excuse me, everyone." James Rothschild, Eleanor's attorney, stood near the entrance to Eleanor's study. His tailored suit and calm demeanor commanded attention. "I need all family members to remain for the reading of Mrs. Hartwell's will. Immediately, please." The room went silent. Then came the rustle of expensive fabric, the click of heels on marble. Victoria's face brightened, barely concealed excitement replacing her performative grief. Richard straightened, already calculating. Brittany grabbed her husband's arm, whispering urgently. Monty's charming smile widened. Even Preston perked up. They filed into Eleanor's study like they owned it, because they thought they would. The room smelled of old books and Eleanor's lavender perfume. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture, windows overlooking the garden. Victoria claimed the chair closest to the massive desk. Richard stood behind her, hands on the chair back like a king behind his queen. Brittany and her husband took the love seat. Monty positioned himself prominently. Preston hovered near the bookshelf. Only I was directed to a chair in the corner, partially hidden behind a floor lamp, the same spot they'd always put me, out of sight, out of mind. Maggie stood behind me, her presence the only thing keeping me from bolting. James took his place behind the desk, Eleanor's will in front of him. He looked around the room, his expression unreadable. Then his eyes landed on me for just a moment. Something in his gaze softened. "Before I begin," James said, his voice measured, "I must convey that Mrs. Hartwell asked me to convey that this will reflects her deepest disappointment and how this family has conducted itself, and her hope that what follows will serve as both consequence and opportunity for change." Victoria's face faltered. Richard's jaw tightened. The room's energy shifted from eager anticipation to uneasy tension. My heart hammered in my chest. What had Eleanor done? James opened the leather portfolio, and the room held its breath. I watched from my corner as Victoria leaned forward, Richard's hands tightening on her chair. Brittany had her phone ready, probably to text her friends the moment she learned her share. Monty's smile was fixed, almost desperate. Only Preston seemed to shrink back like he knew something was coming. I, Eleanor Catherine Hartwell, being of sound mind and clear purpose, do hereby bequeath my entire estate as follows. He paused, meeting each person's eyes. To my granddaughter, Ashley Marie Hartwell, I leave the entirety of my financial assets, totaling approximately $40 million, the Hartwell Plantation Estate and all properties therein, and controlling shares of Hartwell Properties. The silence was deafening. Then came chaos erupted. "What?" Victoria shot to her feet, her face draining of color. "That's impossible. James, there's a mistake." "There's no mistake," James said calmly. I sat frozen, my mind struggling to process what I had just heard. $40 million, the estate, controlling shares, everything. My hands trembled in my lap. Maggie gripped my shoulder, her fingers digging in with shock. "This is absurd!" My voice boomed. "My mother wouldn't. She couldn't."
Montgomery Hartwell, you will complete certification as a financial counselor and provide free services to low-income families, helping them manage debt, create budgets, and achieve financial stability, minimum 20 families per year. Monty's charming smile had vanished entirely. His face had gone ashen. Preston Hartwell, you will design and oversee construction of eco-friendly, sustainable housing for conservation workers and low-income families. You'll work directly with Ashley on all projects. Preston looked stunned, but something else flickered across his face. Not horror like the others. Something closer to hope? "This is insane," Victoria said, her voice trembling with fury. "Mother was clearly not of sound mind when she made this will. We'll contest it. We'll have it overturned." "You won't," James said flatly. Mrs. Hartwell spent 3 years working with multiple law firms to ensure this will is legally unbreakable. She anticipated every possible challenge. She had psychiatric evaluations. She documented her reasoning extensively. Any attempt to contest will result in immediate forfeiture of your inheritance share, which will then be donated to conservation charities. The room erupted again, Victoria shouting about the trail, Richard demanding to see documentation, Brittany crying, Monty trying to negotiate. Their voices crashed over me like waves, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. This wasn't what I'd expected. I thought maybe Eleanor left me something small, a token, a message. Not everything. Not this kind of power over the people who'd spent 15 years making me feel worthless. "Ashley knew about this," Victoria whirled on me, pointing an accusatory finger. "She schemed with my mother. She's been planning this for years." "Mrs. Hartwell," James said sharply, "Ashley knew nothing about these arrangements. Mrs. Hartwell met with her monthly but never disclosed her intentions. This is as much a surprise to Ashley as it is to you." All eyes turned to me. I forced myself to meet their gazes. Victoria's was pure hatred. Richard's was cold fury. Brittany's was disbelief mixed with rage. Monty looked desperate, calculating. Preston's was unreadable. "You can't make us do this," Victoria said, turning back to James. "We'll refuse. We'll walk away from the money." That's certainly your choice, James agreed. However, Mrs. Hartwell anticipated that possibility as well. If any family member refuses their assignment, their inheritance share doesn't simply vanish, it's redirected. Half to Ashley's Conservation Foundation, half to charities supporting the exact communities you'd be serving. Your refusal would actually strengthen the causes Mrs. Hartwell cared about. The trap closed around them, and I could see them realize it. Refusing meant losing everything and watching me benefit even more. But accepting meant 5 years of humiliation, working for the daughter and granddaughter they'd dismissed their entire lives. "This is revenge," Richard said quietly, his voice tight with anger. "She's punishing us." Mrs. Hartwell called it an opportunity, James replied. Her exact words were, "I'm giving them the chance to become people worth knowing and giving Ashley the resources to expand the work that actually matters. If they choose pride over growth, that choice will speak for itself." Brittany stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. "I'm not doing this. I'm not cleaning up after animals like some kind of—" She stopped, looking at James. "What happens if I quit partway through?" "Immediate forfeiture. The 5 years must be completed in full with satisfactory performance reviews conducted quarterly. Miss one review, fail to meet standards, or abandon your post, you lose everything." "This is extortion," Victoria hissed. "It's a conditional bequest, perfectly legal. You're free to refuse." Montgomery stepped forward, his charm cracking to reveal pure desperation. "James, surely we can negotiate modified terms, perhaps, different assignments, shorter timeframes." "The terms are non-negotiable," Mrs. Hartwell was very clear. The room fell silent except for Brittany's quiet crying. I watched my family, these people who'd made me feel small my entire life, grapple with their new reality. Part of me felt a savage satisfaction. They deserved this. They'd earned every second of the humiliation they were feeling. But another part, the part that remembered Eleanor's warm hands holding mine over lunch, her gentle voice asking about my work, that part wondered what she'd really intended. Was it revenge? Or was it something else? "I need to speak with my family privately," Victoria said, her voice strained but controlled. "We need time to discuss this." "Of course. You have 48 hours to inform me of your decisions. After that, those who refuse will forfeit their shares." He gathered the papers, then pulled an envelope from the portfolio. "Mrs. Hartwell also left this for Ashley, to be opened privately." He handed me the cream-colored envelope, Eleanor's elegant script across the front. "My dearest Ashley, letter 1." My hands shook as I took it. The family watched me like a thief who'd stolen their birthright. Victoria's eyes burned with such hatred I felt it physically. She leaned close as she passed my chair, her voice a venomous whisper. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." They filed out, leaving me alone with Maggie and James. The study suddenly felt enormous and suffocating at the same time. I stared at the envelope in my hands, Eleanor's final words to me, and wondered what I'd just inherited. A fortune or a war? Back at my apartment, I sat on my worn couch with Maggie beside me, Eleanor's letter unopened on my lap. The space felt even smaller than usual. My thrift store furniture, my secondhand books, my photos of rescued sea turtles and rehabilitated hawks. This had been my life. Simple, meaningful, mine. And now everything had changed. "You gonna open it?" Maggie asked gently. My fingers traced Eleanor's handwriting. "What if she's wrong, Mags? What if they can't change?" "Then you get $40 million and watch them fail," Maggie said bluntly. "Ash, they've treated you like garbage your entire adult life. Your mom cut you off financially when you were 20 because you wouldn't give up on environmental science. Your dad hasn't had a real conversation with you in over a decade. Brittany uninvited you from her wedding. They're not victims here." She was right. I knew she was right. But Eleanor's words from our last lunch echoed in my mind. People become who they think they have to be, Ashley. Sometimes they need someone to show them a different way. I opened the envelope. Eleanor's elegant script filled 2 pages. "My dearest Ashley, If you're reading this, then the hardest part of my plan has begun. I imagine your family is furious and you're overwhelmed. That's exactly as I expected. Let me explain what I've done, and more importantly, why. I've watched my children and grandchildren become people I don't recognize. Entitled, cruel, obsessed with appearances and wealth. I blame myself. I gave them everything, including the luxury of never facing consequences. I showed them my disappointment, but never forced them to change. That ends now. You might think this will is about punishing them. It's not. It's about saving them. From themselves. From the emptiness of lives built on nothing but money and status. And yes, it's about finally, publicly validating the choice you made 15 years ago when you chose purpose over profit. But Ashley, here's what I'm really asking of you, and it's harder than simply watching them suffer. Give them a genuine chance at redemption. Not because they deserve it, they don't, not yet, but because becoming someone who can extend grace to those who've hurt you is the final piece of becoming the woman I know you're meant to be. The 12 letters I've left you will guide you through this journey. Each opens at a specific moment when you'll need wisdom, warning, or simply someone who loves you, reminding you of your strength. Don't let their anger harden you. Don't let power corrupt you the way it corrupted them. And don't do this alone. You have James, whom I trust completely, and others who will support you. This is my final gift to you, not just resources for your work, but the opportunity to discover whether forgiveness is possible even when it's not deserved. P.S. They'll try to break the will legally. They'll fail. I've spent 3 years ensuring that, but watch Montgomery carefully. He's more desperate than the others know. I read it twice, tears streaming down my face. Maggie read over my shoulder, then let out a long breath. Well, shit. She wants me to give them a chance, I said, my voice hollow. She wants you to be better than them, Maggie corrected. There's a difference. She squeezed my hand. Ash, you don't owe them anything. Eleanor's plan is brilliant. It punishes them while funding your work. You can enforce those conditions without ever actually forgiving them. But that's not what she's asking. No, she admitted. She's asking you to be a better person than they've earned. That's asking a lot.
Meanwhile, across town in Victoria's mansion, the family gathered in the formal living room. Brittany paced frantically while her husband scrolled through his phone. Richard sat rigid in an armchair, his face like stone. Monty stood by the window, his charm completely gone. Preston perched on the edge of the sofa, looking miserable. "We can test it," Victoria declared, her voice sharp with authority. "We hired the best litigation firm in Charleston. We prove Mother was mentally unfit." "The will specifically addresses that," Richard said quietly. "She had 3 psychiatric evaluations. All declared her completely competent." "Then we prove undue influence. Ashley manipulated her." Richard interrupted, his tone wary. "James said Eleanor met with Ashley monthly, but never discussed the will. There's no evidence of manipulation, and any contest triggers immediate forfeiture." "So you're just giving up?" Victoria's voice rose. "You're going to let that ungrateful child take everything?" "She already has everything," Richard said. "The question is whether we're willing to work for 5 years to get our shares." "I'm not scrubbing animal cages," Brittany said shrilly. "Do you have any idea how that would look? My friends, my social media followers?" "Your social media followers don't pay for your lifestyle," her husband snapped. "We're underwater on the house. Your shopping addiction has maxed out our credit cards. We need that inheritance." Brittany stared at him shocked. "You never told me." "Because you never ask. You just spend." He stood. "I'm saying this clearly. You're doing it. 5 years of work for $8 million. That's what, over $1 million per year? People work entire careers for less. But working for Ashley is apparently the price of fixing our financial disaster." He walked out, leaving Brittany speechless. Preston spoke up quietly. "The eco-housing project actually sounds interesting." Everyone turned to stare at him. "I mean, it's what I wanted to do before I joined the company. Sustainable architecture. It's what I studied in college." "Preston," Victoria said coldly, "you're not seriously considering this." "What's the alternative? Say no and lose $2 million? Keep working in real estate doing something I hate?"
He looked at his mother, and for the first time in years, there was something like defiance in his eyes. Maybe this is a chance to do something that actually matters. Matters? Victoria's laugh was bitter. You sound just like Ashley. This is exactly what Mother wanted, to turn you all against each other, against me. She's not turning us against you, Richard said, his voice cold. She's exposing what we already are. He stood. I need to think, alone. As he left, Monty finally spoke. Victoria, I need that money. His voice was strained, desperate. I'm in deep with some bad people. I can't walk away. Victoria looked at him sharply. What are you talking about? Gambling decks, about $2 million. I've been juggling them for 3 years. I thought the inheritance would clear everything. If I refuse now, I'm done. The room fell silent. Victoria's face tightened with disgust. You're pathetic. Maybe, Monty agreed, but I'm also doing it. I'm taking the assignment. One by one, Victoria's united front crumbled. Brittany needed the money, Preston wanted the work, Monty was desperate, even Richard was calculating that 5 years wasn't forever. She looked around at her family, her brother, her husband, her children, and saw them all preparing to bend to Ashley's will. Fine, she said finally, her voice like ice. We'll do it, all of us, but not because we accept this insane punishment. We'll complete these assignments, collect our money, and then we're done with Ashley forever. 5 years, and she's out of our lives permanently. Agreed, Richard said from the doorway. He'd come back, his face set with grim determination. 5 years. We endure it, we get paid, we move on. Preston said nothing, but something in his expression suggested he wasn't quite agreeing to that plan. The next morning, James called. They've all agreed to the terms, every single one. I'll be drafting up the assignment contracts today. All of them? I'd expected Victoria to refuse, to let pride destroy her chance. Your mother made it clear she's only doing this under protest, but yes, they'll all be starting next week. He paused. Ashley, I need to set up a meeting. There is estate management to discuss, legal matters to review, and we need to establish oversight procedures for the assignments. Of course, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. How about dinner tomorrow night? We could discuss everything properly. Something in his tone made my heart skip. Professional, but with an undercurrent of something else. Dinner would be good. After hanging up, I sat in Eleanor's study, my study now, and thought about what came next. My family agreed to the terms not because they wanted to change, but because they wanted the money. Eleanor had trapped them perfectly, but she had also trapped me, asking me to hope for their redemption while knowing they were just enduring this for the payout. Could people change when they were forced, or did genuine transformation require willing hearts? I didn't know, but I was about to find out. 1 week later, I stood in the grand entrance of the Hartwell estate, my estate now, waiting for my family to arrive for our first official meeting. Dolores had set up the formal dining room with notepads, water glasses, and copies of each person's assignment contract. James stood beside me, briefcase in hand, his quiet presence steadying my nerves. Remember, he said softly, you have complete legal authority here. Eleanor made sure of that. They can argue, they can complain, but ultimately you decide whether their performance is satisfactory. That's what I'm afraid of, I admitted. I've spent my entire life being powerless around them. Now I'm supposed to be the one judging them? You're not just qualified, you're the perfect person for this. His hand brushed mine briefly. You know what meaningful work looks like. You know the difference between genuine effort and performance. The doorbell rang. Dolores answered, and my family filed in. Victoria's face was a mask of controlled fury. Richard looked exhausted already, though his first day of labor hadn't even started. Brittany wore workout clothes, designer ones, clearly having no idea what animal sanctuary work actually entailed. Monty's charm was back in place, but his eyes were bloodshot. Preston was the last to enter, and when he met my gaze, he gave me a small, almost apologetic nod. We gathered in the dining room. I sat at the head of the table, Eleanor's seat. Victoria's jaw tightened when she saw that, but she said nothing. I cleared my throat, surprised when my voice came out steady. Thank you all for coming. I know this situation isn't what any of us expected. That's an understatement, Victoria interrupted coldly. Mother, Preston said quietly, let her talk. Victoria's head snapped toward him, shock crossing her face, but she went silent. I continued. Eleanor's will gives me legal authority over these assignments. I didn't ask for this, but I'm going to honor her wishes. That means each of you will complete your work with genuine effort, report to me weekly, and treat these projects with the respect they deserve. And if we don't, Victoria challenged. Then I invoked the forfeiture clause, I said, meeting her eyes. James has drafted performance standards for each assignment. Meet them, and after 5 years, you get your inheritance. Fail to meet them, miss required meetings, or show consistent lack of effort, you lose everything. I slid copies of the contracts across the table. Everyone picked theirs up, except Victoria, who left hers sitting there like it was contaminated. Victoria, I addressed my mother formally, deliberately using her first name. Your assignment is to develop and personally teach environmental education curricula for at-risk youth at the Magnolia Street Community Center. 4 days per week, 12 students per session. You'll need to create lesson plans, source materials, and submit quarterly progress reports. I don't know anything about teaching children, she said flatly. Then you'll learn. That's the point. Richard spoke up. Ashley, I've built a company worth $200 million. Manual labor it's not productive use of my time. It's productive use of Eleanor's money, which you're hoping to inherit. The land restoration project needs workers, and you'll be one of them. Report Monday at 7 a.m. to the Low Country Conservation Site. Bring work boots and gloves. His face darkened, but he nodded once, sharply. Brittany, I turned to my sister, the Charleston Wildlife Rescue needs all hands. You'll be cleaning enclosures, preparing food, and assisting with animal care under Dr. Martinez's supervision. She's expecting you Monday at 6 a.m. 6 in the morning, Brittany's voice rose. I have children. I can't just... Your children have nannies, who you pay very well, according to the financial records James reviewed. They'll manage.
Brittany's face flushed, but she had no response. Monty, you'll be completing a financial counseling certification program over the next 3 months, then providing services through the Charleston Family Financial Wellness Initiative. 20 families per year, minimum. I can do that, Monty said quickly. Too quickly. His desperation showed. Good. Preston, I turned to my cousin and my voice softened slightly. Your assignment is designing and overseeing construction of eco-friendly housing for conservation workers. I'd like to meet with you separately to discuss the project's scope. I'd like that, Preston said, and there was genuine warmth in his voice. I've been sketching some ideas already. Victoria made a disgusted sound. Of course you have. That's enough, I said firmly. This meeting isn't a negotiation. These are your assignments. You'll complete them professionally, or you'll forfeit your shares. I stood. We'll have weekly check-ins every Sunday at 2 p.m. Attendance is mandatory. James will be present to document everything. This is humiliating, Victoria said, finally standing. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Finally getting to lord over us? I'm not enjoying it, I said truthfully, but I'm doing it. Eleanor trusted me with this responsibility, and I won't let her down. I looked around the table. You can hate me, you can resent this situation, but you will do the work with integrity, or you will leave with nothing. That's your choice. The room fell silent. Even Victoria had nothing to say to that. One by one, they filed out. Preston lingered. Ashley, he said quietly when we were alone, I'm sorry for everything. For not standing up for you when we were kids, for letting them push you out, for... Don't, I interrupted, my voice softer than I intended. Not yet. Show me with the work first, then we'll talk about apologies. He nodded, understanding. Fair enough. When do you want to meet about the housing project? Tomorrow? 10 a.m.? I'll be here. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think Eleanor was right. About you. You're exactly who should be doing this. After he left, James began packing his briefcase. That went well. You were clear, fair, and firm. You established authority without being cruel. I didn't feel fair. I felt like I was throwing my tower around. There's a difference between wielding power responsibly and being cruel. He closed his briefcase. The cruel thing would be letting them manipulate you, letting them perform instead of actually working. You're holding them accountable. That's not the same as revenge. How do I know the difference? How do I know when I'm being fair versus when I'm just punishing them because I can? He stepped closer, his eyes serious.
By asking that question. Someone who just wanted revenge wouldn't care about the distinction. His hand touched my shoulder briefly. "You're going to be fine, Ashley. Better than fine." Monday morning, the reality of the assignments began. Richard arrived at the Low Country Conservation Site at 7 a.m., wearing $1,000 work boots he'd clearly just bought. The site supervisor, Marcus, a 50-year-old former Marine, looked him up and down with barely concealed amusement. "You Hartwell?" Marcus asked. "Richard Hartwell, yes. No mister, no fancy titles here. You're Richard, and you're on drainage duty. See those stakes over there? You're digging a trench 3 feet deep between them. Shovel is in the truck." Richard stared at the stakes, probably 50 yards apart. "That'll take all day." "Yep," Marcus agreed cheerfully. "Better get started." By noon, Richard's expensive work clothes were soaked with sweat. His hands, unused to physical labor, had already blistered. The other workers, a mix of volunteers and paid laborers, gave him curious looks but didn't engage. He was the rich guy doing court-ordered community service, basically. The humiliation was visceral. At the Magnolia Street Community Center, Victoria faced her first class. 12 children aged 10 to 14, mostly from low-income families, all looking at her with varying degrees of suspicion. She'd prepared a PowerPoint presentation on the importance of environmental stewardship. 5 minutes in, a girl named Keisha raised her hand. "Why should we care about the environment when we got bigger problems, like rent and food and stuff?" Victoria blinked, clearly not having prepared for that question. "Well, the environment affects everyone, but rich people like you don't worry about rent," another boy called out. "You got big houses and cars. Why you here pretending you care about us?" Victoria's carefully prepared presentation crumbled. These children saw right through her. She wasn't there because she cared. She was there because she had to be. And they knew it. At the Charleston Wildlife Rescue, Brittany discovered that animal care meant scrubbing enclosures that smelled like things she'd never encountered in her pristine life. Dr. Martinez, a no-nonsense veterinarian in her 50s, handed her a hose and scrub brush. "Start with the raccoon enclosure. They're messy eaters." She stared at the filthy cage, at the dried food and waste covering every surface. She pulled out her phone. "No phones during work hours," Dr. Martinez said flatly. "This isn't Instagram." "I was just going to—" "Put it away or go home. Your choice." Brittany put away the phone, picked up the brush, and nearly gagged at the first scrub. That evening, I met with Preston in Eleanor's, my, study. He brought a portfolio of sketches, his hands slightly shaking as he spread them across the desk. "I know these are just preliminary, but I've been thinking about this for years. Sustainable materials, solar panels, rainwater collection, natural ventilation." He looked up and I saw the old Preston, the cousin who talked excitedly about changing the world when we were teenagers. "I want to build something that actually helps people, not luxury condos for rich people who already have 3 houses." I studied the sketches. They were good. Really good. Thoughtful design that balanced efficiency with livability. "These are beautiful, Preston." "You think so?" His face lit up. "I was worried they'd be too idealistic, not practical enough." "They're exactly what we need." I pulled out a map of the conservation land. "There's a 10-acre parcel here near the Wetlands Restoration Project. We could build housing for seasonal workers, researchers, volunteers. Make it a model for sustainable development." We spent 2 hours planning, and for the first time since Eleanor's death, I felt something like hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe some of them could change. But that night, while everyone slept, Monty sat in his car outside a bar on the outskirts of town, staring at his phone. The text message glowed in the darkness. "Payment due, 2 weeks. Don't make us come find you." He looked at his banking app. The estate accounts he had limited access to as part of his assignment showed significant funds. Eleanor's money. Ashley's money now. Money he desperately needed. His finger hovered over the transfer button. Just $50,000. They'd never notice. Ashley had millions now. What was $50,000? But then he remembered Eleanor's letter. Ashley's warning, the chance he'd been given. He remembered the counseling certification program starting tomorrow, the families he was supposed to help. He closed the banking app, but the text message remained, and the 2-week deadline ticked closer. Inside the estate, I sat at Eleanor's desk, my desk, reviewing the day's reports. James had called to say everyone showed up for their first day. That was something. Richard was blistered and exhausted. Victoria's class had been a disaster. Brittany had cried in her car afterwards. But they'd shown up. Dolores knocked softly. "You should eat something, baby girl. It's past 9. "I will. I gestured at the papers. There's so much to manage." She sat down across from me, her weathered hands folded. "Your grandmother sat in that same chair many nights, worrying over this family. She loved them, even when they disappointed her. How did she stand it, watching them become people she didn't recognize? She never stopped hoping they'd find their way back." Dolores's eyes grew distant. "I remember when your mama was young, 8 years old, bringing home a stray cat she'd found, begged Eleanor to let her keep it. She fed that cat every day for 3 years, loved it fierce. That girl had compassion once. Life just buried it under other things. Do you think it's still there? The compassion?" I think Eleanor believed it was. That's why she did all this. Dolores stood, patting my shoulder. "Your job isn't to save them, honey. It's to give them the chance to save themselves. Eleanor trusted you with that because she knew you wouldn't give up on them too easy, but you also wouldn't let them walk all over you."
After she left, I opened my laptop and started a journal. Eleanor had kept one for 40 years. Maybe I should too. A record of this strange 5-year experiment in forced redemption. Day 1 of the assignments. They all showed up. That's more than I expected. Richard looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Manual labor is probably the hardest thing he's done in decades. Victoria's class was a disaster. But Keisha, one of the students, asked exactly the right question. Why should they trust her? Brittany cried after cleaning raccoon cages. Part of me felt satisfaction at that. Part of me felt guilty for feeling satisfied. Preston brought designs that took my breath away. For the first time, I saw the cousin I used to know, the one who talked about architecture that could heal communities, not just house them. If everyone could transform like he seems ready to, but that's probably naive. Monty worries me. Eleanor's warning echoes. He's desperate in a way the others aren't. I need to watch him carefully. This power Eleanor gave me, it's heavier than I expected. Every decision feels loaded. Am I being fair? Am I being too harsh? Too lenient? How do I know the difference between accountability and revenge? James says I'll figure it out. I hope he's right. Eleanor, if you can somehow read this, I'm trying. I'm trying to do what you asked, but I'm terrified I'll fail you, that I'll become just like them, drunk on power, cruel without meaning to be. Help me stay myself through this. Ashley. I closed the laptop and looked around the study. Eleanor's books, her photographs, her life's work surrounding me. Tomorrow would bring the second day of assignments and probably new challenges. But tonight, I let myself feel the full weight of what I'd inherited. Not just money and property, but responsibility for whether this family could be saved from itself. And the terrifying knowledge that Eleanor believed I was strong enough to carry that weight. 2 weeks into the assignments, I received a call at 2 a.m. that made my heart stop. It was Dr. Martinez from the Wildlife Sanctuary, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Ashley, you need to get down here, now. There's been an incident with Brittany." I threw on clothes and drove through empty Charleston streets. Maggie, who'd been staying with me since the will reading, in the passenger seat. At the sanctuary, an ambulance's lights painted everything red and blue. My stomach dropped. Dr. Martinez met me at the entrance. "She's being transported to Charleston General. Broken arm, possible concussion.
The horse knocked her down. What happened? What happened, Dr. Martinez said, her tone sharp, is that your sister ignored every safety protocol we taught her, walked into the rehabilitation paddock without permission to take a selfie with Thunder, a rescued horse who's barely been here a week and is still extremely skittish, and got exactly the result anyone with a half a brain could have predicted. My phone rang. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. "This is your fault," she screamed before I could even speak. "You put my daughter in danger. You gave her an assignment that could have killed her. We're suing you. We're breaking this will, and you're going to pay." "Mrs. Hartwell," Dr. Martinez took my phone, her voice cold with authority, "your daughter violated direct safety orders to take a photograph for social media. She endangered herself and the animal. This facility has security cameras. Everything is documented. If anyone's liable here, it's Brittany for her reckless behavior." Silence on the other end. Then Victoria hung up. At the hospital, I found my family in the waiting room. Victoria paced like a caged animal. Richard sat with his head in his hands, his work clothes still dirty from the conservation site. Preston stood by the window, and Monty looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes sunken and haunted. "This is on you," Victoria said the moment she saw me. "You put her in that position." "I put her in a job with extensive safety training that she chose to ignore," I replied, keeping my voice level despite my shaking hands. "Dr. Martinez has footage of her walking past warning signs, ignoring staff instructions. She's my daughter. And she's a 33-year-old woman who made a dangerous choice." I looked around at all of them. This is not a game. These assignments have real consequences if you don't take them seriously. "You're enjoying this," Victoria hissed. "Watching us suffer, watching Brittany get hurt." "I'm not enjoying anything," my voice cracked. "I'm terrified. I'm responsible for this whole situation, and yes, part of me wonders if Eleanor was wrong, if this is all a terrible mistake." I sat down heavily. "But Brittany wasn't hurt because of the assignment. She was hurt because she treated it like a joke, like something she could Instagram her way through. That's not my fault." A doctor emerged. "Family of Brittany Hartwell?" We all stood. "She's stable," the doctor said. "Broken radius, mild concussion. She's asking for her mother." Victoria rushed through the doors. Richard followed. Preston hesitated, then came to sit beside me. "This isn't your fault," he said quietly. "Brittany's been like this her whole life, doing whatever she wants, assuming someone will clean up the mess. But I'm the one who gave her an assignment that put her near a dangerous animal. You gave her an assignment with proper supervision and safety protocols. She chose to ignore them." Preston rubbed his face. "Ashley, if we're going to blame you every time one of us screws up, this 5 years is going to be impossible. We have to own our choices." James arrived 20 minutes later, still in pajamas under his coat. I'd called him on the way. He sat beside me, his presence steadying. "Dr. Martinez sent me the security footage. It's clear Brittany bypassed 3 separate safety barriers and ignored 2 staff members telling her to stop. Legally, this doesn't affect the will or your authority. If anything, it demonstrates why oversight is necessary." Victoria is going to fight this. Let her try. The documentation is ironclad. He paused. "How are you doing?" "I don't know. I keep thinking, what if she'd been killed? What if—" "She wasn't, and you can't control their choices, Ashley. You can only enforce the standards which, from everything Dr. Martinez told me, you've done properly." When Brittany was moved to a room, I asked to see her alone. She lay in the hospital bed, her arm in a cast, looking smaller and younger than her 33 years. Her eyes were red from crying. "Come to yell at me?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "No. I came to see if you're okay." She laughed bitterly. "I'm not okay. My arm is broken, I have a concussion, and my mother just spent 20 minutes telling me this is all your fault for making me work with animals."
Is that what you think? Brittany was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she shook her head. No, it's what I want to think, because that would be easier. But I walked past the warning signs. I heard Maria yelling at me to stop. She closed her eyes. I wanted one good photo. Something to show my followers that I was doing something interesting. Something that wasn't just my fake perfect life. This honesty caught me off guard. Brittany, she continued, her voice thick with medication and emotion. You know what's funny? The work was actually getting interesting. Before this, I mean. There was this injured osprey that I'd been helping feed. Dr. Martinez said it might be ready for release next month. I was excited about that. Actually excited about something that wasn't shopping or parties or keeping up appearances. She opened her eyes, looking at me. And then I ruined it because I couldn't resist trying to get likes on Instagram. You didn't ruin it, I said carefully. You made a mistake. A dangerous one, but a mistake. The question is whether you learned from it. Mom wants me to quit. She says I should forfeit the inheritance rather than keep humiliating myself. What do you want? She seemed surprised by the question. I don't know. I've never really thought about what I want. I've always just done what I was supposed to do. Marry the right person, have the right number of kids, join the right clubs, post the right pictures. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm miserable, Ashley. I've been miserable for years. My marriage is a lie. My Instagram is a lie. Everything is a lie except those few hours at the sanctuary when I was actually doing something real. My throat tightened. This was the first real conversation we had since we were children. Then come back, I said. When you're healed, come back and do the work for real this time. No phones, no potos, just the actual work. You'd let me come back after this? Eleanor's conditions say you have to complete 5 years. They don't say you can't make mistakes along the way. I stood. But Brittany, if you come back, it has to be real. No performing, no treating it like content for your followers. The work matters. The animals matter. If you can't commit to that, then maybe your mother's right. She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks.
When my phone rang at 1 a.m., I was still at the hospital. Dolores's voice was gentle but firm. Miss Ashley, you need to come home. Mr. Montgomery's here, and we got a situation. 20 minutes later, I stood in my study facing my uncle, who looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. The computer screen still showed the pending transfer frozen where Dolores had stopped him. $50,000, I said quietly. Eleanor's money. My money now. You were going to steal it. I was going to borrow it. Without asking? That's called stealing, Monty? I sat down heavily. Eleanor warned me about you in her first letter. She said to watch you carefully because you were more desperate than anyone knew. I have gambling debts, he said, the words tumbling out. $2 million. I've been juggling them for 3 years, and the people I owe, they're not the kind who accept excuses. I thought Eleanor's inheritance would save me, but 5 years is too long. They want payment now. So you were going to embezzle from the estate? I didn't know what else to do. His voice rose with panic. You don't understand what these people are capable of. Then we get you protection. We involve the police. I can't go to the police. These people, they have connections. I'd be dead before. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. I looked at James, who'd arrived right after me. Legally, what are my options? You can prosecute him for attempted theft. You have documentation, a witness, clear intent. Or you can invoke the forfeiture clause. He loses his inheritance share immediately. I looked at Monty, this man who'd occasionally been kind to me as a child, but had abandoned me the moment it wasn't convenient. This man who was so desperate he'd steal from his own family. Eleanor's words echoed. Give them a genuine chance at redemption. Or, I said slowly,
I can give you one chance. One. You enter a 30-day addiction treatment program immediately. You work with James to develop a legal payment plan for your debts. You complete your financial counseling certification because helping others manage money might teach you to manage your own. And if you ever try to steal from this estate again, I will prosecute you and invoke forfeiture without hesitation. Do you understand? Monty stared at me, tears streaming down his face. Why? Why would you give me a chance after this? Because Eleanor asked me to. Because I'm trying to be better than the person you all taught me to be. I stood. But Monty, this is your only chance. Use it or lose it. He nodded, unable to speak. As James made calls to addiction treatment centers, I walked out to the garden where Dolores was sitting on Eleanor's favorite bench. You did right. Hard thing, but the right thing, she said as I sat beside her. How do I know? I asked, my voice breaking. Brittany could have died because I gave her an assignment. Monty almost stole from me. Maybe Victoria's right. Maybe this whole thing is a mistake. Your grandmother knew it would be hard. That's why she chose you. She knew you wouldn't give up on them too easy, but you also wouldn't be a pushover. Dolores patted my hand. You gave your sister a chance to learn from her mistake. You gave your uncle a chance to get help for his addiction. That's not weakness, baby. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. Real strength never does. Real strength feels like you're barely holding on. She smiled. But you're doing it. You're holding on. Later, I sat in my room and opened my laptop to journal. Week 2, and everything is falling apart. Brittany is in the hospital with a broken arm because she ignored safety rules to take a selfie. Victoria is threatening lawsuits. Monty tried to embezzle $50,000 to pay gambling debts. I had to make 2 impossible decisions tonight. Give Brittany another chance after she endangered herself, or enforced consequences that would prove Victoria right about the assignments being too dangerous. Give Monty a chance after attempted theft, or invoke the forfeiture clause and watch him potentially be killed by loan sharks. I chose mercy both times. I don't know if that makes me wise or weak. But here's what surprised me. Brittany was honest for the first time in years. She admitted her life is a lie, her marriage is fake, and the sanctuary work was actually making her feel something real. That conversation was worth more than any punishment I could have given her. And Monty, broken, desperate, crying, he reminded me that these aren't just antagonists in my revenge story. They're broken people Eleanor believed could be fixed. Eleanor, I opened your second letter tonight. You wrote, by now, one of them has likely betrayed your trust. The question isn't whether they deserve forgiveness, it's whether you can live with becoming someone who never gives it. You knew Monty would try something. You knew I'd have to choose between punishment and compassion. You're still teaching me, even from the grave. I just hope I'm learning the right lessons. Ashley. 1 month into the assignments, the estate had settled into an uneasy routine. Richard showed up exhausted every evening, his hands permanently calloused now, his expensive work clothes replaced with actual work gear. Victoria's teaching remained a struggle, but she'd stopped having complete disasters. Keisha and the other kids had worn her down into something approaching humility or at least exhausted resignation. Preston's eco-housing designs were progressing beautifully, and we'd started preliminary site work. Monty was in day 28 of his addiction treatment program, and the reports were cautiously optimistic. And Brittany surprised everyone by returning to the sanctuary 2 weeks after her injury, arm in a cast and asking Dr. Martinez for a second chance. No phone, she said. No photos, just the work. Please. Dr. Martinez was skeptical, but something in Brittany's eyes, maybe genuine humility, made her agree. Now, Brittany was on overnight duty with sick animals, the grueling shift nobody wanted, and by all accounts, she was showing up every single night. I sat in Eleanor's study on a Sunday afternoon, the mandatory weekly check-in scheduled for 2 p.m. But first, Dolores had brought me something, a stack of Eleanor's personal journals, 40 years worth of her private thoughts. Your grandmother wanted you to have these when you were ready. I think you're ready now. I opened the oldest journal, dated 1975, and Eleanor's elegant script filled the pages. The first entry stopped me cold. I married into the Hartwell family today. Richard's family thinks I'm lucky, a poor girl from the Mill District snagging one of Charleston's most eligible bachelors. They don't know he's the lucky one. I'll build something real from their old money. I'll make this name mean something beyond country club memberships and regatta trophies. But God, the way her mother looked at me at the reception, like I was dirt she'd tracked in on her shoe. She called me dear in that voice that really means trash. 20 years from now, I'll have earned more respect than she ever did. This is a promise to myself.
I flipped through the years. Eleanor documenting building Hartwell properties from a small operation into an empire. Her frustration with Richard Sr.'s drinking. Her hope when Victoria was born. Then her disappointment as Victoria grew obsessed with status, the very thing Eleanor had fought against. A 1998 entry caught my attention. Victoria announced today she's marrying Richard Hartwell III, my late husband's cousin's son. These families and their intermarrying. She says it's love. I see the calculation in her eyes. She's marrying him to consolidate the business, to strengthen the Hartwell name. She's becoming exactly what I fled from, someone who values pedigree over people. I tried to talk to her about it, asked if she loved him. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Love is for people who can't afford stability, she said. My daughter, sounding exactly like the people who once looked down on me. I've failed her somehow, given her so much that she can't see anything real anymore. Later entries tracked Ashley's birth, Eleanor's immediate recognition of something different in her youngest granddaughter. Baby Ashley has her father's eyes, but my curiosity. Watched her today with an injured bird in the garden. She was so gentle, so focused on helping it. Victoria scolded her for getting dirty. 3 years old and already being taught that appearances matter more than compassion. I won't let them crush this one. The journals detailed Eleanor's secret lunches with Ashley, her frustration watching the family exclude her, her growing conviction that something drastic needed to happen. 2019. Ashley called today from South Carolina Aquarium, where she's working on sea turtle rehabilitation. Her salary is poverty level, her apartment barely heated, but I've never heard her voice so alive. Meanwhile, Victoria just bought her 4th vacation home. The contrast is obscene. My children and grandchildren have everything and value nothing. Ashley has nothing and values everything. This family is broken, and I caused it by giving them too much too easily. 2021. I've decided. The will. It's the only way. Attorneys think I'm crazy. Vindictive, one called it. But it's not revenge. It's rescue. Force them into Ashley's world, into meaningful work, into confronting what really matters. Maybe if they experience her world, they'll understand what I've lost sight of until too late. That dignity comes from how you treat the powerless, not how you're treated by the powerful. This will hurt Ashley. Putting her in authority over people who've wounded her will test her in ways I hate to imagine. But she's strong enough. She's the only one strong enough. I closed the journal, tears blurring my vision. Eleanor hadn't come from wealth. She'd married into it, fought for respect, built an empire, and watched her success poison her descendants into exactly the kind of people who'd once looked down on her. This wasn't just about my family. It was about breaking a cycle of inherited cruelty that had repeated for generations.
A knock interrupted my thoughts. James stood in the doorway. "It's almost 2. They'll be here soon for the check-in." "James," I said, "Eleanor was poor. She came from nothing. Did you know that?" He nodded, sitting across from me. "She told me when we drafted the will, said she'd spent her life trying to keep her family from becoming the people she'd escaped from and failed completely. That's why the assignments focus on service to communities they've ignored. She wanted them to see the world she came from. She saw herself in me. She was your second chance, a grandchild who chose purpose over profit, just like she'd once chosen to build something meaningful instead of just enjoying inherited wealth. She loved you fiercely, Ashley." The doorbell rang. Our weekly meeting was about to begin. In the dining room, the family gathered, and the change in Richard was startling. A month of manual labor had transformed him physically, leaner, tanned, muscles where there'd been softness. But more than that, something in his face had shifted. The rigid coldness had cracked. "Richard," I said, reviewing my notes, "Marcus says your performance has been exceptional. You've exceeded all expectations." He looked surprised. "I have?" "You're on time every day, you work without complaint, and you've been apparently helping the other volunteers. Marcus specifically noted that you stayed late twice last week to help a new volunteer who was struggling with the work." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "There's a guy there, Carlos. He's on work release from prison, drug charges. He's trying to turn his life around, but he's got no experience with physical labor. I just showed him some things." "That's exactly what this assignment is about," I said quietly. "Working alongside people you'd never meet otherwise, seeing their humanity." "He told me his story," Richard continued, "and there was something raw in his voice. How he got addicted to painkillers after a construction accident. How he lost his family, his job, everything. And I realized I've been so focused on building the company, on legacy and success, that I never actually looked at the people whose communities we've been gentrifying. Carlos lost his apartment because we bought his building and converted it to luxury condos. The development I was so proud of destroyed his life." The room was silent. Victoria stared at her husband like he'd grown a second head. "Marcus has been teaching me about land restoration," Richard went on. "How it's not just about making things look nice, it's about healing ecosystems, creating habitats, undoing damage. I've been thinking maybe that applies to more than land. Maybe I've been doing damage that needs undoing." I didn't know what to say. This wasn't performance. This was genuine transformation beginning. "Victoria," I shifted to my mother, "the community center reports that attendance has improved in your classes. Kiasha's mother specifically requested that I thank you for the extra time you've been spending with her daughter." Victoria's face was carefully blank. "Kiasha is challenging, but bright. She asks questions no one else asks." "What kind of questions?" "Why rich people care about saving trees, but not about people who can't afford heat. Why we protect animals, but let children go hungry. Questions that make me very uncomfortable." Victoria's voice was tight. "She doesn't let me get away with anything." And maybe that's good," Victoria admitted quietly, the words seeming to cost her. "She called me out last week, said I was teaching them about environmental justice, but clearly didn't understand actual justice. She asked me what I'd done besides talk." Victoria met my eyes for the first time in weeks. "I had no answer, so I asked her what I could do. She's been educating me about her community's needs ever since." This was not the mother I knew. The Victoria I knew would never admit to being wrong, would never let a child educate her. "Brittany," I continued, "Dr. Martinez says you've been exemplary on night duty. She's particularly impressed with your care of the injured screech owl."
Brittany's face lit up, actually lit up, in a way I hadn't seen since we were children. Athena, that's what I call her. She was hit by a car, broken wing. Dr. Martinez said she might not fly again, but I've been working with her every night, and yesterday she spread both wings. Dr. Martinez thinks she might recover fully. I've been following the sanctuary's updates, her husband said quietly beside her. It was the first time he'd spoken at these meetings. Brittany comes home every morning exhausted and covered in bird poop, but she's happy. I haven't seen her happy in years. Brittany looked at him, surprised. Then she reached for his hand. A small gesture, but loaded with meaning. Preston, the eco-housing site work is ahead of schedule. You want to give an update? Preston stood, pulling out his tablet to show renderings. We've broken ground on the first 4 units, using reclaimed materials where possible, solar panels, gray water systems, and native landscaping. But what I'm most excited about, he pulled up photos of people, the construction crew. I hired from a job training program for people trying to re-enter the workforce after incarceration. They're learning skilled trades while building something that matters. One guy, Marcus, same Marcus supervising Dad, he told me this is the first job where he feels like he's creating something instead of just surviving. The passion in Preston's voice was undeniable. He wasn't doing this for the inheritance anymore. He was doing it because he'd found his calling. Monty will complete his treatment program this week. Upon his release, he will begin his financial counseling certification. James has helped him develop a legal payment plan for his debts. Victoria spoke up, her voice cold.